We have learned that David Sweat, that convicted murderer who was sentenced to life in prison for shooting a sheriff's deputy 22 times, who escaped 23 days ago, has now been apprehended by the authorities there just 2 miles south of the Canadian border. You're looking at the first picture that we have seen of him, obtained by our own Deborah Farrick. This is the first image taken of him since he escaped from prison, bloodied, shot twice, but alive with the hope that he will give the authorities all of the information as to how this could have happened and who is responsible for helping him and Richard Matt escape from a maximum security prison that no one has ever managed to escape from in its 100-year history. Joining me on the phone, someone who spent time there, Eric Jensen, a former inmate at Clinton Correctional Facility. He worked at the tailor shop. That is where both escapees also were. That is where Joyce Mitchell, who allegedly helped them escape, also worked. Eric, thank you for being with me, sir.
You're welcome, Poppy. How are you?
I'm well. What is your reaction to this?
I'm surprised that it didn't go down worse, and I'm glad that it didn't go down worse with law enforcement and nobody else was injured. You brought up an interesting point before, how they were able to just walk down the street in these civilian clothes. And inside Clinton Correctional Facility, you're allowed to wear a sweatsuit. You're allowed to wear other things besides your state garments. So
Really?
They could have came out of that prison that night and walked right down the street, and nobody would have knew that they just escaped.
So you can't see this picture, right? Are you watching CNN? Can you see the picture we're showing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Him in the camouflage clothing, yes, I see that.
So what do you make of his appearance now versus the David Sweat that you knew? Does he look more pale? Does he look more gaunt?
He looks sick. He looks malnutritioned. He looks like he is just at his end and unwillingly probably just ready to give up so he can get a good night's sleep and not have to look over his shoulder. Because he obviously looks like he lost a lot of weight since I last seen him. We used to work out together. He weighed a good 180, 190 pounds when I knew him.
Let's talk about the relationship between Richard Matt and David Sweat. Did you see one as more sort of the ringleader, if you will, one more as the leader and the other as a follower?
Yes. David Sweat was actually very smart, articulate. When you spoke to him, you would not guess that he was in there for a murder, especially a murder of a law enforcement officer. Richard Matt was more of the like crazy. He was a crazier person than Dave. So one was probably the brains, one was probably the brawn, one was probably more of the let's go do it, let's do it now. So David probably sat there and figured out everything, and Richard probably just kept pushing it. So they complemented each other in a sense.
Have you spoken to any other inmates, fellow inmates who are now out of prison? Or I don't know if you still keep in touch with some of them in prison, and just their reaction over the past 3 weeks to this, the fact that this is a facility where no one has escaped in 100 years, and the fact that it's playing out almost like a Hollywood film, that we've learned that some of these tools were passed allegedly in frozen hamburger meat, to the inmates, and that there was allegedly a sexual relationship, with one of the correctional officers. I mean, it's just extraordinary, and I'm wondering what their reaction has been from people who are at this prison.
I've spoken to a few people, not people that actually knew Richard Matt or David Sweat, but a few individuals that were in the penitentiary, Clinton, Attica, and a few others that I know. Their reaction is that there is no way that this could have happened without an inside helper. And there you have it, Joyce Mitchell with the hamburger meat, with the tools. Officer Palmer not scanning that meat because he became so complacent with David and Richard because he knew them. He worked with them every day on the cell block. And now it's like that facility is a fortress. And by them letting people go down the catwalks, rig their own electrical outlets up, and I know about that because I paid somebody personally to go do that for me, and it happens within 5 minutes. The officer lets them back there. They go rig your fuse, and there you go. Now your fuse doesn't blow when you're cooking and watching TV at the same time.
So you're saying you paid
It's really amazing.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir. You said, Eric, that you've paid an officer when you were an inmate there and they broke the rules willingly.
Oh, definitely, definitely, and that's not the only thing they break the rules doing. That's just one of many. They come search your cell. If you have cigarettes and chewing tobacco out in your cell, it's like an unwritten rule. They'll take it, they'll put it in their pocket, they'll ruffle your bed up to make it look like they searched your cell, and there you go. They're on to the next cell. They don't even pay you no mind. As long as they get what they want, you get what you want.
Eric, you knew David Sweat. Do you think he's going to talk?
I did.
If he is in a condition, if you know, we don't know how serious his medical condition is at this time. We do know he was shot twice, but if he is in the condition to talk, is this someone who's going to give police the information they want?
I honestly believe not, because now that he's already sentenced to life in prison, and now that he is going to get an additional 50, 60, however many years they give him on top of this, plus 10, 15, or 20 years in solitary confinement in an S block in upstate New York. He has nothing to gain by giving information. I understand before, when he was arrested on his initial crime, he did speak to officers. Maybe it was because he thought he'd get a linear sentence. But now that he's already doing life, and he knows what his future holds if he does pull through these gunshot wounds, I guarantee it, he won't talk.
Eric Jensen, former inmate at Clinton Correctional Facility, the same prison where David Sweat and Richard Matt escaped 23 days ago. Those two men on the lam no longer are. Eric, thank you very much. I appreciate it.